manager for this project. This is a public info meeting to review our project on 101A and improvements at Craftsman Lane and Boston Post Road. I'm going to give you a little bit of history, and then I'm going to have our consultant engineer come up and give you the technical information on the project. So a little bit of history on this corridor. We first started looking into addressing traffic concerns on 101A back in the 80s. At that point, we were looking at doing a bypass of the whole corridor. That plan lost favor in the 90s. Sometime around 2002, we completed a new corridor study that focused on improvements to the existing roadway as opposed to building new infrastructure. That study had a whole host of different improvements, mostly focused on capacity, safety, and multimodal user accommodations. So this stretch of road was one of the recommendations that was identified in that corridor study, and there are several of those concerns that are addressed by this project. It was added to the 10-year plan as an individual project in the 2015 to 2024 10-year plan, and so at this point we've been working towards this project. So the needs that it's addressing, the capacity deficiency, so it can't handle the volume of cars that are trying to use the roadway. It was identified as having poor pedestrian accommodations along this stretch, and then Craftsman Lane, because of the configuration at the intersection with Boston Post Road, was being used as a bypass so that people could bypass traffic lights and come out further down on 101A. And so that was also identified as a concern, routing that volume of traffic through a more residential area. Previously, we had a consultant that carried this just about through preliminary plans. That was done in 2015. So most of the work that you're seeing tonight is that older work. Because we typically do a preliminary and then a final design stage, things kind of wound down prior to the 10-year plan funding becoming available. So I came on board as project manager for this project about 1.5 years ago, and since then we've got the consultant back on board, and we are ramping up design to come into final design and get this out to construction. So with that, I'm going to turn that over to our design engineer, Bill Moore, who will go through the technical aspects of the project.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yes, just to, most of you got a chance to at least take a peek at the plan. The big things that are happening with it. Well, let me just explain the plan a little bit first. The red are the buildings that are out there today, existing buildings and houses. And the yellow is basically the limits of new pavement that will go down with the project, so the limits of work. And the green in the roadway is the proposed median, and you maybe can't tell from where you're sitting, but the brown along the edges of the yellow are the new shoulders, 5-foot shoulders, and then there's purple along partially along the eastbound or the westbound side, and mostly all the way along the eastbound side. Those are the new sidewalks. And then of course there's an existing sidewalk from Home Depot's entrance to Boston Post Road already there today. And then there's some blue on here, and those represent our stormwater basins, either vegetated swales or grass swales. They're not necessarily, they're blue, but they're not necessarily water. They're places to store and detain stormwater during storm events. So what we're doing with this project is we're adding a third eastbound lane, and as many of you know, there's as we come up onto this area, there's 2 lanes that go through eastbound, and then as you come through the intersection, 3 gets developed, and then another left turn lane gets developed beyond that. So there's a gap in the alignment going eastbound where there's only 2 lanes and there's 3 lanes going further eastbound. So there'll be an added lane eastbound that ties into that so that we complete that connection. And then there'll also be a second right turn from Continental. Today there's 1 right turn movement to go westbound on Route 101A, and there'll be an additional right turn lane to add capacity to the intersection. And then on the other side, going from 101A westbound to Continental, there'll be the development of a free right turn movement, a channelized right turn versus what's out there today is you basically come to the stop at the intersection and take a right. And that, along with the extra third lane, will improve the capacity of this intersection. Then beyond that, we're adding, let's see what else we got on here. This just kind of describes a little bit on the screen here, is where we're adding the right turn lane, just so you can see it for sure, and the channelized right, and then the third eastbound lane. Sidewalk connectivity. This is, I talked a little bit about it. We now will have sidewalks coming down Continental, brand new sidewalk, up to the entrance to Home Depot. Beyond that, there's an existing sidewalk that follows along. And then on the eastbound side, there's a sidewalk that starts at the entrance to PC Connection, and that sidewalk will continue where it isn't today, down to the intersection of Continental, and then continue on to the completion of the project and tying on to what's going forward eastbound. And bike accommodations. That's a little hard to see here, but we now have 5-foot shoulders with this project on both sides. And one of the key developments is doing the latest standard design for shoulder bike lane width is to move the shoulder now passes, the bike lane passes between the right turn lane and the through lane and goes straight through to the shoulder going westbound. So that's an improvement over what's out there today. And there'll be 5-foot shoulders everywhere. Just to give you a little idea, if you look back up at the screen, this is what's happening out there. If we're looking eastbound, this is a cross section of the roadway with the left turn that's out there today. This is probably in the area where there's a left turn developed to go into Home Depot. And there's 2 lanes today, but there'll be a third lane and a shoulder and a sidewalk and then PC Connection down here at the bottom of the hill. And so you can see there's what's happening out here will be widening to the roadway. The existing roadway, as you know it today, will still be there. We'll pave over it to clean it all up in the end, but we'll be widening about a lane and a shoulder approximately to get that to work. So there's it's not a lot of heavy construction, but there's drainage work that goes with it. There's detention basins and things like that. As far as pedestrian movements, back to that, you see this dash line here. That dash line is what I was just talking about the bike shoulder going through the intersection rather than someplace you'll see it'll follow the right turn lane, and then it kind of brings the bicyclists into nowhere land where they have to cross turning traffic. In this case, it just naturally goes between the through lane and the right turn lane and connects to the other side, so it's much safer condition for bicycling. There'll be pedestrian crosswalks on all legs of the intersection where there isn't any today, so people from the northerly side or the southerly side of the roadway will be able to cross over and vice versa very safely there. Craftsman Lane, we're calling this a traffic lane, traffic calming fix. What you can see, maybe I can show it to you here, but I'll bring it up on the screen as well, is Craftsman Lane today, as it goes through and it connects to 101A further down, has become sort of a cut through or a bypass, and especially with the capacity problems out here with not having that third lane. And it's become a problem down here at Craftsman and Boston Post Road where there's no, they just blend together. It's very hard to stop there. You have to look way over your shoulder to see where you're coming from. And oftentimes when people are coming in and want to take Craftsman, you can't really tell until the last second which way they're going. They're either going Craftsman or Boston Post, who knows. So we're going to turn this into a 90-degree intersection here. You can see it ties in perfectly at 90. That'll give us a good sight distance in each direction and make that a lot safer movement. And we also will be cutting off this connection that's there today between the parking lots at the church, and because there's been a lot of traffic going back and through there that now can use this more safer location down in Craftsman and Boston Post Road. And environmental considerations. The National Environmental Policy Act, this is determined to be a categorical exclusion. So it's essentially a project which has no major impact to the environment. Natural resources, there's minimum wetland impacts with this project. And there's a shoreland permit required because we're working real close to the stream down here to tie the project in, so we'll have to submit a shoreland permit. Water quality, we're doing a great job on water quality here. We're treating 100% of the pavement out here through the limits of our project is going through all these stormwater basins and best management practices that we have out here. And we're accounting for the northern long-eared bat protections. We don't have any major clearing out here, which can be a big problem for the northern long-eared bat, but we'll be accounting for that in our work, and invasive species management. Also, cultural resources, there's been none found out here that we have to be aware of. And New Hampshire DOT would like me to read this. It's our statement. Our statement towards the widening of New Hampshire 101A intersection improvements. The Bureau of Environment of the New Hampshire Department of Transportation has the responsibility of investigating the potential impacts that our projects will have on the surrounding natural, cultural, and social environments. The environmental review is being conducted by our consultant Stantec. The findings will be summarized in an environmental document. The department has reviewed the project area to determine if there are any historical or archaeology resources within the area that would be affected by the construction of this project. Historic properties can include buildings and structures 50 years or older, as well as archaeological sites. It has been determined that this project will not result in any impacts to historical and cultural resources. With regard to the potential impacts to other resources, the project is not expected to involve substantial impacts to noise levels, air quality, hazardous materials, wetlands, or floodplains. As part of the project, the department will secure all necessary environmental permits prior to construction. We are asking that if anyone has concerns about the above-mentioned resources in or immediately adjacent to the project area, they bring them to our attention tonight or contact the Bureau of Environment at 271-3226. And I mentioned a little bit about stormwater management already. These are new regulations that the department is designing projects to in the last couple of years. And the requirements are to treat 100% of the impervious area within the project limits. And as I mentioned, we've got 9 different water quality treatment areas, basins. One's a vegetated wet basin that'll have water in it but plants. And then the rest of them are grass swaled detention basins or swaled at the TOA slope. This is just to give you a little idea of the TOA slope version. This is PC connection over here and the parking lot and the roadway I showed you earlier about the widening. And then the slope comes down and we create a berm that creates a low spot that can capture water and let it drain into the soil there, or make its way through a grass swale to treat it for sediment and get into our stormwater system. And we're thinking from our construction duration time, it's going to be about a 2-season project. We plan to minimize traffic impacts. There's going to be significant utility work out here. Traffic control during construction. The majority of the work, as I just showed you, is to the outside. So we feel we can maintain traffic on the existing lanes today and do most of the work on the outside. There'll be periodic lane shifts and some lane drops during off-peak hours, but for the most part, it'll be pretty much the way you have it today. We'll maintain all businesses and abutters driveways and access to their parking lots and businesses. Utility coordination, we're just really getting started on that. We're verifying where everything is. I don't know, you may have seen out there, must have been 1,000 flags out there in the ground. Yeah, that was part of the utility verification process, trying to find out where everything is. And we know there are aerial and underground and private utilities within the project corridor. We'll have detailed coordination with them during the final design, and then the planned widening and the new ponds will probably necessitate some relocated underground utilities and definitely some overhead utility poles. And also new drainage will be going in, pipes and catch basins and manholes. And right-of-way coordination will be ongoing as well. Permanent and temporary easements are anticipated to accommodate this work, as well as access for construction and long-term maintenance. Direct communications with potentially impacted abutters is anticipated in early 2019. You want to talk about the current?
Thank you, Bill. So going forward, at this stage, we've pretty much wrapped up the preliminary design. We had the consultant approved back in December, and so right now, they've completed the reevaluation. So between 2015 and 2018, some of those new environmental regulations came into play, the stormwater treatment in particular. That's a newer regulation. Some of the northern long-eared bat is a new threatened species that we needed to look at. We've completed those reevaluation efforts, and we're working towards a public hearing, hopefully in September, depending on how schedules work out. And that is for our right-of-way process and sort of sets that in motion. That's a formal meeting where we present, again, the layout that we've shown here tonight, explain the property impacts and why they're required, and people have a chance to provide testimony at that time about the impacts and the projects. So again, hopefully September 18, but may get bumped back depending on schedule. Once that occurs, we'll jump into final design, and that will include coordination with any of the property owners that are impacted by the project. Our right-of-way bureau will be in touch to talk about the impacts and negotiate easements with you. Right now, we're scheduled to advertise in the fall of 2020, and that would start actual construction in the ground in 21 and 22. Right now, the construction cost is estimated at $4.1 million, and that's about all I have for you. So if you've got any questions, this is my contact information. We do have a project website that we'll be posting information on periodically, including the plans and the presentation from this evening. So with that, I'll open it up. Would any of the elected, do you have something, Bill?
No, I was just going to
Okay.
be ready to answer questions.
I was wondering if any of the elected officials first have any questions or comments that they'd like to make? No? Okay, so then,
Okay.
yeah, you don't have to,
Well,
well, because it's, that's right, we're on TV.
Just so everybody knows, my name's Alastair Mills, as well as being a local resident for this. I live just off Continental Boulevard. I'm also the Vice Chairman of the Planning Board here. I drive through this set of roads about 8 times a day, either in my car or in a 48-foot yellow painted vehicle, which is a school bus I drive for Hollis Transportation. I am quite honestly amazed at this. I don't think you're doing anything for it and spending a lot of money doing it. And if I'd like to make some comments. Firstly, I don't know if anybody did a traffic study and sat in the eastbound turning lane trying to get into Continental Boulevard at about 8:45, as I do every day, and counted the number of people who went through on yellows and reds. Similarly at Home Depot in both directions. Did anybody count the number of people who went through yellows and reds? I won't come out of Home Depot until I've looked 3 times both ways, because people run those lights. And to my mind, widening the eastbound lanes to 3, you're not really gaining much. There are 2 lanes down there, and by the time you go down Amherst Street to the Shell garage, you're back to 2 lanes again. I'm not sure what you're really trying to do. I like the Craftsman's Lane, and I presume now Boston Post Road is going to have the right of way, whereas at present Craftsman's Lane has the right-of-way. I also ask, what are you going to do with these pedestrians? Are you going to put pedestrian-controlled segment in the traffic light system? I hope not, because that's going to add another 30 seconds to everybody's travel journey. You do not know, unless you've sat there, and what happens at that junction, Continental Boulevard, at 8:45. My honest opinion, and you probably know from my accent, I came from the other side of the pond, that area cries out for the same development that's being done by your teams in Keene. That should be a roundabout with pedestrian bridges to get them over the roundabouts and proper turning lanes, a bit like you've started doing. But quite frankly, that Continental Boulevard junction is a nightmare. People hammer through that, as we know. There's at least one person got killed in the last 2 years, and Craftsman's Lane ain't much better. The number of accidents there is quite amazing. I myself was rear-ended coming this year by same sort of thing, people running lights. And I honestly beg you to think a little bit more about this layout. I don't think you're making anything improvements. I know you'll get more traffic flow from between there and Shell Garage. So what? That's my opinion, based on living on that road.
Thank you. We did conduct traffic studies. I don't know that people sat and watched, but we did conduct traffic studies. You're correct that the improvement is not just going to make traffic go away. There's still going to be traffic, but the modeling has showed that this will be an improvement over the conditions that are out there today. Yes, at Craftsman Lane and Boston Post Road, Craftsman Lane will now have a stop condition.
That's good.
As opposed to the condition that's out there today. So that is part of the improvements that we're making there. And then in regards to the pedestrian signal, they won't necessarily have a dedicated pedestrian signal at each cycle of the lights, but it would be triggered by the push button type situation. So people wanting to cross the road would trigger a signal when they're there.
That will shut down all traffic?
We have not finalized that configuration yet, whether it would be a dedicated pedestrian cycle or like a concurrent where the through traffic and pedestrians moving in that direction would have the concurrent. So that is something that we will be finalizing during the future engineering work.
If you're spending that sort of money, put bridges so people can, a nice slope bridge up and over. Don't let pedestrians walk across there. You will have even more accidents. But that's my opinion. I only drive the road every day.
Okay. Thank you for your input. Is there anybody else that?
I'm Bob Pratt. I'm a resident of Merrimack, but I'm also Vice President of Facilities and Site Services for Connection, formerly PC Connection. I also represent the interests of the owners. PC Connection or Connection is actually a tenant in this area. And the owners are G&H Post LLC and H&G Post LLC. We probably pick up about better than 50% of the frontage for the project. So it affects us considerably. I'm curious as far as the traffic flow, because what I'm seeing, and it kind of speaks to this gentleman's point also, is that I'm seeing this becoming more of a stacking lane. In other words, so you've got traffic grouping up, so we allow better flow, stacks up the light, and then it's allowed to flow through. The concern that I have about it becoming a stacking lane is becoming at certain times of the day essentially a parking lot. Has there been any discussion with emergency services, fire department, ambulance services, and so on, to see if this raises any concern for them, or as it becomes a parking lot again, getting through in the event of an emergency?
We've not had specific dialogue with emergency services in the town. To address the light issue, we are in looking at the signals in Nashua and trying to time the signals to work together with the Nashua system because of the proximity. In terms of the parking lot situation, right now you've got 2 lanes of traffic with people at the light Now you'll have 3 lanes of traffic, so I don't know that it really greatly affects the ability of emergency services to respond. You
Well,
will
it
have a
kinda
slightly
does
wider
because of
shoulder.
the shoulder.
Now.
And now you'll be incorporating a sidewalk there also. So it kind of limits, and a median, kind of limits the ability that they've got to navigate.
I might be able to help with that.
Sure.
Normally, we would put in an Opticom system with the
Mhm.
fire department, and that's something we could look into.
So it'll release the lights.
Yeah,
and-
it'd make it green so everybody goes so that they can then go through the lights.
Yeah, but is that for just Merrimack, or you've got to remember that the Amherst and Milford ambulances come thrashing down that road routinely, and they don't have the ability to turn the traffic lights as the Merrimack people do?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you without looking at it, but my expectation would be that there is a system in place at the other signals. So we'll look into that. with
You've
the
got
fire
it, because I
department.
tell you, the Milford and Amherst can't turn the lights. They come through and they're relying on the good nature of the citizens to pull out of the way to let them through.
You do have a fire department, a substation, which is just it's on the north side of, it's on Natticook, maybe 3/4 of a mile away.
Yeah,
And
and
any
my next
any
door.
responses that they make to us or to anybody else is through that. And that's, we've become a large commercial community through there now. So that's my concern as far as the traffic. I've got some concerns and just some comments as far as the stormwater retention. With it being at the toe of the slope, is it going to be a piped system into the swales, or is that going to be gravitational flow?
There'll be a pipe system going into the fire retention cells.
Okay.
And based on some of the, we're still working on the design, but based on some of the geotechnical data that we got, we're expecting that they will have and so they would be connected. Sure. These 3 bioretention cells, the stormwater would get to them from a closed system in the roadway. And
Is it going to come straight down the slope, because that's going to be quite a pitch?
no, actually, it would enter right into the bottom of the pond, or close to the bottom of the pond.
So there'll be catch basins
There'll be
along
catch basins on the curved road.
along the curb
So you're going to
section.
have catch basins that are going to go down, structures that are going to go down 20, 25 feet?
I don't believe it's that deep.
That roadway is elevated probably 20, 25 feet above our parking lot. If those basins are going to be just off the toe of that slope,
Yeah,
the
that's what
foot of
she's-
the basin is going to be somewhere near that. So you can see with the elevations that you've got here, how far down that is down the slope.
Goes down about like this.
So I don't know what your scale is on that. So to get that onto to a 1/4 inch per foot pitch?
That's a perfectly
It's acceptable.
typical.
Yeah,
Right.
what I'm getting at is how deep your structure is going to have to
Our
be.
structure's probably, about 8 feet deep.
It could be, yeah.
I've rechecked that, because you're about 20 feet below, 8 feet below,
Not in this
1/4 inch
area.
per foot?
As you can see, we're not at the very tallest slope, we're up the slope. a little bit.
Okay. And then a concern that I've got with the stormwater, because you're going to end up picking up oils, salt, so on from the roadway that's going to be carried in the stormwater. It's going to be brought into the structure, it's going to have a modest sump there in the structure. And then you're going to end up discharging it into the swale. The swale is going to leach naturally.
Well, they're bioretention cells, so they're going to filter the stormwater. So there's going to be pre-treatment before it'll be allowed to filter into the
Okay.
bioretention area. So the pre-treatment will either be a deep sump catch basin, like an offline.
So is there an oil water separator involved in this at all? So do you separate the oils from, or will the biosystem also separate it?
Well, either the deep sump catch basins, or you have to, or we'll have a small forebay in these bioretention
Okay, because
cells.
the concern that I've got there relates to the subsurface condition you have in that entire area,
Okay.
whereas that is the town aquifer, one of the primary aquifers for the town.
Right. So they'll be designed in accordance with the AOT regulations
Mhm.
and for a groundwater protection area as well.
Okay.
But the intent, we think that these bioretention cells, there'll be an underdrain. So the water will be pre-treated in a forebay or deep sump catch basins. Then it'll be allowed to go into these bioretention cells where it will filter through the soil media.
Okay.
Then it will be collected in an underdrain system, and then that will be carried away, and we would outlet it to another system downstream.
Okay, so those retention areas are going to be tied together with a
Yes.
piping system. So the eastmost system, you're
Yes.
going to pipe it into a stormwater system?
Yes, there's actually 2 existing pipes where that green area is.
Okay. The reason I'm asking this, and I don't know if you have a section that shows the north side of 101 at all.
No, we're not,
Don't believe
most
so.
of the project ties in at the curb line on the north side.
Okay.
So the existing slopes and sidewalk will be retained from Boston Post Road to the Home Depot, and then from the Home Depot Drive over to Continental.
The reason
so
I'm
minimal-
asking for that is if you look to the north side of the road, there is the natural slope or the blasted slope that you've got that comes off from, called the Home Depot property,
Okay.
that comes down over. And you've got a natural swale that's evolved at the foot of that slope today, currently.
Yes.
You're piping from the south side right now, and you're going another, say, 70 to 80 feet further to the south, and then you're discharging into, or the potential discharge, particularly with overflow, a heavy storm. Even though it's piped, you get overflow, it has the potential to go over a retention area. That's going to be discharged, and it's going to be untreated. It's going to be discharged either into our parking lot or into our area, and that area is all very sandy. That has the potential to go right down into the aquifer. We are in a limited salt application zone there. We have to be concerned about our runoff, and the state should also have to be. My point is on the north side of this road, which would be on the upper side of this map right here, we have a natural detention area at the toe of that ledge slope. Is there any reason you couldn't consider, instead of piping on the south side, to pipe back into that side? We've already got stormwater management system on that side that you could tie into.
I guess I don't know the capacity of that system.
But we don't have, what I'm saying is, you don't have a capacity right here now. You're creating it. If you're going to create the capacity, you can create it just as easily on the north side and not disturb any of the slope that's already there, rather than developing ponds on this side.
It's hard to know without looking at the grading, but as you mentioned, the site on the north side kind of slopes down to the road, and then from the road, we slope down towards the PC Connection property. So without looking at the grades, it may not be possible to get the water to flow there.
I understand. I'm asking that you
Yeah.
do take a look at that and research that as an option, because that can eliminate any overflow that you're going to have there is going to go easterly towards Continental Boulevard, where you already have the systems there that can handle it. You've got a very large amount of impervious surface in that area in the intersection. Those pipes had to be designed to handle that. You're not increasing that capacity down there.
Yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying, and I would just say that we've looked at this area. It's been a challenging area to find enough to treat 100% of the pavement
Yeah.
to meet the AOT requirement. So we've looked at just about every potential option, but that doesn't mean we can't go
Yeah,
back.
I'm concerned about the stability of the slopes there too. You've got pretty much a natural repose there. It's gone back to, in some areas, probably about a 1-to-1 on that. Maintaining them right now is very difficult. So any extension that you do, right now you've got a flat area that you've shown in this section, which is back into the retention areas. It's a little bit different when you start to get up into these areas and you don't have that flat area. And you start to alter that area at all by expanding the widening of the 101A. It would make sense to me, you're going to be really close to having to either alter that slope, which is going to make it difficult to maintain, or you're going to have to incorporate retaining walls there so that you can expand your paved area without impairing the slope on the far side of it. I'd ask that you take a look at that also.
Absolutely. Part of the design process.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi.
Hi.
I am a resident of Merrimack, and I live on Tinker Road. I am in between Continental Boulevard and Thornton, so that little strip. I would have to agree with this gentleman over here. I don't see what huge impact having just one 3-lane addition is going to make, although I do love the fact that this is going to change for those residents, because I do feel their pain with it being a cut-through. So why I'm here and why I'm talking is because of that cut-through aspect. Right now, where you have noticed a sharp increase in traffic on our road, and I'm wondering if any of this work that you're going to do here, you're saying that it's not going to impact us when you're doing the construction. I'm hoping that's true. Also, is this supposed to help with that? Are you supposed to, is this supposed to take any relief off of our little section? Because right now, people travel from Nashua all the way down Tinker Road, and then they meet up with Continental Boulevard. Excuse me. So I'm wondering, is this going to help us in any way, or because that's a huge thing for us. One would think that people would be going down this main road, but they don't. They cut through our back road to get where they're going, and then they're the ones who are hooking up on Continental Boulevard, and they're buzzing up 101A.
And that's because there's too many traffic lights down 101A, and they know that Tinker Road is the quick way to get there.
Not anymore. It's getting to the point where not anymore.
Yeah, well,
So-
101A ain't much better.
So what is the relief for us? We have a main road, we are surrounded by main roads, and yet we see volume like it's crazy. No respect for speed limits, no respect for no through trucking signs. We're struggling, I'm struggling, I don't know about the rest of the people, but I'm willing to do this on their behalf. So my question is this is supposed to be that road, this is supposed to get people from that A to B, but we're not, we're getting it. So this doesn't, adding a third lane here where you're going from 2 to 3 to 2, just seems like you're just broadening where the bottleneck is gonna happen.
Well, you won't necessarily, like, obviously this project isn't necessarily going to address your particular street. With the increased capacity at the intersection, that may alleviate some of the concerns. The speed and the no-through trucking is more of an enforcement issue. There's not a lot that we as the department can do about that. One thing that I can sort of put out there that doesn't necessarily address this project, there is another project in the works in the 10-year plan to address the Nashua section of 101A. So that is a future project, again, looking at making this section more uniform. So that is quite a ways out right now. It's out in 25, 26. So it's not going to be soon, but this is one piece in a bigger plan for the corridor.
Okay, if I knew that there was some relief coming, I don't expect you to necessarily do anything for me specifically on my road, but the expectation would be you've got this big, enormous road here that is supposed to be built for this, and not our tiny little road that is a residential, narrow, compact road. So my hope is that you will address this, and someday you'll give us some relief, that we're not going to be the go-to road for everybody in town, because this is a mess. That's discouraging, so.
So
okay, if you have more
that's-
doing with that, that's great, and if you think of us in the future, that's also good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, last call. Okay, sure, come on.
I apologize if you addressed this earlier.
No.
I was just curious, in your traffic studies, if you determined of the traffic that's coming, from Milford toward Nashua, what percentage of it diverts onto Continental Boulevard? Of these lanes, how much turns onto Continental and how much continues on? Because I feel like that has some impact on how useful, the additional lanes would be, and whether or not it's going to help, and, how it will help.
I don't know, Bill, do you have that information?
Well, I don't have that information handy with me today, but we did a comprehensive traffic study, and what we found with the improvements that we did, we improved the conditions substantially over what they are today. When we come back before you again, we'll have traffic numbers handy with us, but it's a substantial amount of traffic that makes that left. It's a double left, and with the addition of the third lane and the extra lanes on Continental Boulevard, we're able to process a lot more traffic through the intersection. So it's going to improve what we call level of service, how it operates quite a bit. And that's the advantage, I think, that we hope that we'll bring to this area is to make 101A flow better so that it's used by people who are going this way rather than go through the residential streets. I mean, it's a part of the solution, not the total solution.
All right.
Just asking a question.
Mhm.
Tom Koenig with the Town Council.
You mentioned that you're going to have another public hearing in September or later. Where do you expect to hold that?
We have not determined that location yet, as far as I know. Our right-of-way office handles that. Typically, we look for a fairly large public space, probably larger than this public space. Sometimes we'll look for schools, auditoriums, that sort of setting.
And we have those that we use frequently for those kind of meetings here in Merrimack, so I'm hoping you're planning to come to this area.
Yes, it would be in Merrimack. Yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry, yes,
Oh, all
it
right.
would be in Merrimack.
So it could end up being over at the upper elementary school or something like that.
Correct.
But you are planning to come back here in
Correct.
September, October timeframe?
Yes.
Depending upon your schedule?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm, excuse me, Kyle Fox, Public Works Director in Merrimack. I just wanted to, for all the people who came out tonight, kind of explain our role in the process. The town works with NRPC. We have Jay Mankara here in the audience, who's the Director of the Nashua Regional Planning Commission. So the town and NRPC work very closely with DOT on all of the projects in the 10-year plan. There's a lot of discussion and communication that goes on between all three. A lot of times, we as the local municipality look inward and focus on what's important for us. This project is important for us, but it's also part of the larger corridor project. As we all know, the entire 101A corridor from the Hollistown line through to Nashua Exit 7 is terrible. As they just mentioned, this is the first step in that puzzle. Getting the third lane eastbound adds capacity here. Once the Nashua projects happen, that'll increase that capacity further. A member of Public Works always sits on what's called the Technical Transportation Advisory Committee at NRPC. We meet once a month as a group. The 13 communities that make up NRPC, there's a representative from each community on that. And over the years, each year we're asked to rank project priorities in the region. The 101A projects always score right near the top. And so for us, we feel this is a very important project and a very important step in the easing the congestion in the corridor. And if anyone has any questions for us, you can look me up on our website or our Facebook page, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay, I'm not seeing any further questions. That concludes our presentation this evening. We'll stick around for a few minutes up at the boards if anything comes to mind. And thank you very much for coming out tonight and being part of this presentation.